2, 3.
Are we live already?
Yeah, perhaps.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Great.
So how are you all doing? Thanks a lot for joining in. My name is Ilya, and if you have already tuned in the past, you might notice that our lineup is a little different today. Unfortunately, Alexei couldn't make it, so but I have two amazing people with me here. It's Alex Telegan, my teammate from GTON Capital, and it's also Sarang Parik, the core developer from SushiSwap. Thank you guys for joining in. Also, there's a person behind the scenes who will be helping with the technical side and everything. So again, we're presenting to you GTON Academy. It's a live stream series which breaks down and explains different foundational concepts from blockchain and crypto. And we're hosting this series with Web3 London. It's our third live stream today. It's dedicated to decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. So guys, welcome. Before we begin to talk about this concept, I want to kindly ask you, both of you, to actually introduce yourself briefly, and then just in 1 or 2 sentences, what are DAOs for you? What's your favorite definition? Do you think they're actually useful for your project, for crypto in general, and for the whole world? So yeah, do you feel like Alex can start?
Yeah, sure. In general, I'm coming from a very different background into the crypto world. Initially, I was studying for business management and marketing and stuff. Then it was something similar to IT management, more or less. And I've worked briefly at Google and like some more traditional side of things, basically like doing business operations, helping people with running ads, etc. Then after resigning from there, I decided to start a development career. And at the dawn of my development career, Alexei and myself actually explored the possibility of turning into blockchain development when it was really just starting out. It was January 2016, and we've been going through Ethereum code, trying to figure out how exactly to build projects on there, etc. It was much different back then, so it was all complicated. You had to like set up everything yourself, run nodes, etc. No infrastructure, so it was quite hard at the time. And basically, I stopped tinkering around with blockchain and switched to more traditional mobile development, where I was like building applications, running teams, etc. But at the same time, I was still like looking at this like blockchain industry. And the same year, in 2016, I was writing a series of articles about the collapse of the DAO on Russian website called Haber, where like people write technical articles about stuff, etc. And I was covering all that. It was in general, I think, 5 articles, like listing all the possibilities, etc., discussing whether or not there's going to be hard fork, etc. So it's very interesting that today we are touching on this topic, and specifically I'm going to talk about the DAO itself. And yeah, later on I joined blockchain development. I joined GTON. Currently am leading smart contracts development here. So yeah, we are running at the DAO. So we are running all of our proposals, at least all the key stuff that we are working on, through the community. And yeah, so it's interesting to discuss, but I think we've got a dedicated topic around how GTON governance works. So we are going to touch on this later. That's probably it for the introduction.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Actually, I didn't know that you were writing that extensively about the collapse of the DAO. That's one of the primary topics of today's live stream. So maybe we will be discussing that in greater detail than I even expected. So it's pretty cool. So Sarang, what about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sarang, and I work as a co-developer at Sushi Swap. Basically, I do anything that's related to Solidity at Sushi. And I'm not, like degen enough as Alex. I've actually started out very young, so I've been doing cybersecurity since my teenage days. I've been credited to finding some bugs at, like Intel and such organizations. And then crypto and, blockchain was kind of, like an innate part, like an innate path forward for me. So I started with Bitcoin, reading the Mastering Bitcoin book, and then actually I got an internship while I was in the college. Believe it or not, Sushi as a DAO is like one of the first actual places in the career that I've actually worked. So I started my career in 2020 when I graduated. So I have a DAO first approach to things, rather than other of my peers who have been actually in the industry from the Web 2 world for a while now. So yeah, and then yeah, I started off with my kind of, like the Ethereum journey with Consensus as an intern at their Indian team. And then I kind of, experimented with smart contract wallets and payments. And it was like around 1.5 years back when I joined Sushi as a core dev. The topic of DAOs actually is very interesting for me because, as you know, my background is security. So smart contract security is something that interests me a lot. And the DAO hack was the first thing that I ever replicated on my local machine and saw how it works. And it kind of, blew my mind that somebody that time imagined this thing and, kind of broke the code in a way. So it was pretty cool. And for me to sum things up, like, what I think about DAOs is like every other system out there. Let's say, take example of democracy. It is not the best, but it's the best out there. So it might not be, kind of applied everywhere and at every place, but for organizations such as like Sushi in particular, or maybe like even GTON, it plays kind of a really important role on how things are governed and, how we differentiate to a new world.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. We'll actually have a dedicated portion of this live stream to how the DAO approach is actually used in Sushi, and I think you will definitely be able to chip in there and talk about it at length. So yeah, first, since it's still a pretty basic kind of lesson, I would say we need to start from the very basics. So let's. There's like a boilerplate definition that a lot of people use. And some of the key points here are that DAOs are essentially cooperatives, which means that it has some kind of a horizontal structure where hierarchy is not the decision-making core feature of the organization, and the decision-making process is actually spread across various kind of collaborators. So yep, sometimes people say that DAOs can actually in the future replace the traditional sort of hierarchical corporational structure, and that's one of the things that sometimes called the techno-democratic approach. But yeah, I mean, in the name itself, we should see that there's a decentralized feature and autonomous feature. Like both of these features have to be present in order for an organization to be actually considered a DAO. And I think we will expand on that a little later. So since we already mentioned the DAO, let's just go back in time. And I'm sure that a lot of people here know about this pioneering DAO. It was founded in April 2016, and it conducted a token sale. It existed for some time, only about 3 months, I think. Then some contributors, some people, they discovered vulnerabilities in its source code. And eventually it was exploited. So $60 million of Ethereum was stolen, and it collapsed like a dying star. So yeah, the DAO, even though Ethereum itself was only 1 year old back then, was actually able to raise $150 million worth of ETH. So a third of these funds were actually stolen. So one of the largest consequences of that was that in attempt to restore those stolen funds, the Ethereum blockchain was hard forked. And I think I'll probably ask Alex to explain what a hard fork is in a couple of slides. So as it usually happens, not everybody was on the same page in terms of what to do with the stolen funds. So after the hard fork, the network was actually split into both of which still exist, like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, or ETC. And if we were to look for some kind of analogies in the real world, what the purpose of the first DAO was, it was first and foremost a venture capital fund, but in a form of decentralized application on Ethereum. And the difference between the DAO and a traditional venture fund, and actually I would say its core revolutionary idea, was that the access to it was open for everybody. So you could become an investor just by, and receive tokens that would represent your equity simply by sending some ETH to the smart contract. So let's go through the timeline of events that led to the DAO attack. So first and foremost, just the background, I think it was Christoph Jensch who wrote the code. It was released publicly. It was an open source code. And even before the 28th day crowdfunding campaign. So it meant that actually this code was accessible for everybody to study, and a lot of vulnerabilities, different kinds of attack vectors were discovered gradually during the crowdfunding campaign. Actually, I want to mention that the DAO was so massive that as of May 2016, it attracted 14% of all Ether token in circulation issued to that date. But then again, the problems started to crop up. People were actually, after the vulnerabilities were discovered, people were actually discouraged from participating in the DAO anymore by different engineers and researchers. There were several papers published, a lot of heated debates, and actually fixes had already been proposed. However, they weren't swift enough to actually implement those fixes. And on June 17, the DAO was attacked. Several exploits actually were used. One of them was, I think it was like recursive call exploit. As a result, the transfer of 3.6 million Ether happened. So it was, yeah. And then what's interesting is that the Ethereum community actually split into several different groups. Some of them actually thought that this hack was sort of a white hat hack, which was sort of a valid action on part of the community. Some of them wanted to somehow to do the actual hard fork in order to get access to the stolen funds, and some of them were just calling for the DAO to be shut down. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Alex or Saren can help me here. I think they proposed to do a soft fork first, but there had been some issues with the soft fork solution as well. So in the end, they decided to go with the hard fork, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there were a lot of discussions about where to go, but yeah, the main problem basically of what was happening here is like it went against the spirit of what Ethereum initially proposed. Basically, it was supposed to be like a platform where you deploy code and it's immutable, and the state of the blockchain doesn't change, and like it doesn't make too much sense that because of one project, although like quite a big one, the entire blockchain is being forked, and it leads to basically changing the behavior, the intended behavior of the chain itself. So it's really interesting.
So it raises,
yeah.
So it raises lots of questions in terms of if you expect your blockchain to be immutable, the smart contract code that you already put onto it to be immutable, and then somehow the DAO can convene and do a hard fork, and then it's split in two, then it means what trust is there to the concept itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you cannot really trust that the transactions that are happening on the blockchain are final. It's basically like if Vitalik is the one who can persuade the majority of the community that something needs to be changed on the platform, then it would mean that like any funds can be like theoretically be transferred from one wallet to another at any point of time. But this assumption does take into consideration that any actors that might propose something like this, they're not interested in making the project unusable. So if an attack like this happens, basically the valuation of Ethereum goes to zero. That's why, although it's theoretically happening, possible, and because this already happened with the DAO hard fork, it doesn't mean that someone is going to explore this possibility of changing the state of blockchain, because it's not in their best interest. Like even from the game theoretical point of view, like you're unlikely to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Sarang, would you like to add anything about the DAO attack itself? Because you mentioned that you actually tried to reproduce it on your local machine.
Yep. And it was actually a very interesting point back then, right? That it actually goes against the spirit of how we trusted blockchain to be immutable. But it also brings in the property of blockchain where, that if people have enough consensus between them, they can make some changes happen. Right. And we have to also look at the Ethereum community back then, which was way more centralized than what currently is. And as Alex mentioned, that certain people had like more influence to basically govern the chain in a certain way, which ultimately, kind of swayed some people to participate in one chain and the other people to participate on the Ethereum Classic, the other chain. Right. So that's also an interesting view to look at the philosophy of this, on how people can take two different sides for the same approach. And the blockchain gives you an option to do so, which is also pretty cool in my mind. I am not advocating hard forks. They're always bad. But in this case, it kind of is a very interesting case. The other interesting case was how it would basically kind of impact the Ethereum roadmap when it goes to something as proof of stake, because as you said, the DAO was having a huge supply of Ethereum back then, right? That means now the hacker actually owns a significant supply of Ethereum. So how it would look like when you activate something like proof of stake, because the foundation was had started bouncing ideas back then about how would a switch from POW to POS look like. So there were like a lot of considerations like this as well, to basically take such a decision. It was not basically that they wanted to just recover the funds for the sake of recovering the funds. And we have seen like more massive attacks, or I wouldn't say like equivalently massive, because I was not sure of the number what Ethereum of 12.7 is worth right now, but there were significantly higher attacks, like the wormhole attack and different kinds of attack, which did not lead to a similar way, because Ethereum is now much more decentralized. And back then, where it was a small community and hobbies just running things in their garage. On the point of vulnerability, right, it was actually coined as reentrancy, which is like written at now almost every page. And you would be surprised to find that there are a lot of contracts in the wild today as well, that had kind of like same vulnerability. So as people say, history repeats itself. We have actually seen this bug as if this was an OWASP list, I would keep this at the top of it, because it is like one of the vulnerabilities that we often see and is one of the most dangerous one. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a nice segue to actually to the next slide, which is lessons to be learned. Basically, I think that the code was not actually properly audited before being released in production, and some of the vulnerabilities could be discovered at the time when it was still early to act. Yeah, basically, it's interesting that the community that has enough voting power can actually overthrow the entire idea of immutability of a blockchain if they need to fix a certain issue that happened. Well, Well, it's also interesting that both of you mentioned that hard forks are actually probably not a solution that you would advocate in that case. And I was wondering if so since the DAO hack actually led to the Ethereum blockchain being hard forked, which is always controversial because it undermines the decentralization feature of the blockchain. I would like maybe Alex to chip in here and talk about hard forks versus soft forks. When is it logical to do a soft fork instead of a hard fork? What is the difference, and what kind of controversy exists here?
So basically the difference between these two approaches is the backward compatibility. Because when a hard fork happens, it means that the new nodes that have the updated code for the consensus mechanism, etc., for the understanding of current state of the blockchain, they can communicate with the old nodes that are not updated. Soft forks, like more or less, you can say, they can be happening pretty regularly. While hard forks is like you really need the consensus of the community, and you have to know like if some part of the network doesn't update to the newest and latest code, because for example, half of the network doesn't approve of what is happening here. This might lead to basically having two different chains that are not connected anymore. And like if someone continues to do operations on the older nodes, it leads to a new outcome compared to what's happening with the new and updated nodes. What I also wanted to touch here, if we are coming back to our topic, DAOs, is actually really interesting that the DAO itself didn't function as the DAO at all, because they didn't actually run any sort of proposals. They didn't invest in projects because the funds were ultimately frozen and returned to the initial owners. But the thing is, it showed that Ethereum itself might function as a DAO, because if you just look at the plain definition, it's decentralized autonomous organization. And this is the organization that has got one ultimate goal of moving the product forward. And this is what happened in this particular case, because the community in general found a consensus and decided that for the majority of developers, at least, not the ones that started maintaining Ethereum Classic, but those who forked, they actually decided that they can in general influence the way that blockchain develops, even in such complicated situations as this one. And it showed that people, although they are not governed by anyone, but they can come together, put forward a proposal, and move forward with it. So it's really interesting that this was actually I would say one of the first examples of how decentralized group of people can move the project further. Of course, it was happening before, with Bitcoin, etc., but without such a drama, because this change was a really big one. But it showed actually some of the investors that if something might affect the network in the long run, this 15% of all Ethereum being stolen, that it's not going to affect the product's future, because we are at least able to be secure from those attacks. So what is the next slide?
That's actually a very interesting point. Basically, actually, the slide goes pretty well with it. It's interesting what actually can be considered a DAO in the world of blockchain. Do we consider validators and miners of a particular blockchain a DAO if they can influence it in a way by making hard forks, for instance? And I would maybe like to ask Sarang to chime in here. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yep, I look at DAO as particularly a social contract itself, right? So you actually don't need to have a governance token and stuff like that. to actually become a DAO. As Alex kind of rightly pointed out in the previous slide, that at that time everybody worked like a DAO, and you could say that the common interest of token was Ethereum, because everybody wanted a way to make sure that their Ethereum has some value, and it doesn't go down or whatever. And they kind of like the miners and the validators work towards a method of two decisions that they took forward. So this is how exactly a DAO function, where there are a certain set of people who agree on a certain set of things and they go forward with it, right? And just like any other things, there can be kind of differences that could lead to another springing of a new organization, or like something like a hard fork, right? So the term DAO is more of a concept rather than some new tech that investors pour in money for. It's basically a social contract that can be executed in a way that it leads to a decision based upon the community sentiment and what the majority of community feels like.
Nice. And I have another question for you then. If we talk about multi-sig wallets, would you consider them to be a DAO?
I would not exactly consider them as a DAO. I would just consider them as like, a multisig, because if you look at how Gnosis multisig is created, right? It's basically kind of how we had banks in the older days, right? Where like three people had like three sets of keys. When you join them, you can unlock the treasure. It's just my all like pirate fantasy movies, but this is what Gnosis Safe is, right? So who becomes on this, right? Like say in the terms of who would, let's say if there's a DAO and they have all these funds, right? A DAO might appoint their multi-sig signers saying that, hey, we trust this guy to have the keys to our treasure, right? Just the same way we vote, kind of our leaders to be a part of, like a multi-sig called democracy, where then they all combine, they have, certain keys to unlock our funds. So I would say like a multi-sig is a part of a DAO, which basically helps you to organize in a way that you don't need a central party at a DAO to execute certain operation, whereas you can have multiple party trusting in that. Maybe the DAO votes, or they're kind of chosen in some way, and can, when they all agree to them, they kind of unlock. So they're kind of like a mini DAO in itself, but they all have the power to basically kind of weigh in and take in, let's say, put that funds to use. But they would be only able to do that depending upon the consensus that they have, and that depends upon we call it like M of N multi-sigs, right? So you should have an X number of, so let's say in the case of Gnosis multi-sig, let's say if there are 7 people and you decided that if 3 agree, right, we should go ahead, right? So if any 3 of the people agree to do that, to do that certain operation, the operation would be done. So it is also in a way a mini DAO, but it actually kind of functions a bit different and is kind of an additive technology to the DAO that makes it work more efficiently.
Right, I agree completely. I would say that this is probably more like a really simple rudimentary building block of a DAO.
Absolutely.
It's something that DAOs use extensively to manage their treasuries, for instance, but it's not enough, because I think it lacks in this feature of autonomousness, actual autonomy, better say. So, but still, for those people who have joined here, who have joined us here, and who want to know more, I'll just maybe go over the basic features of Gnosis. Actually, we as a DAO at GTON Capital, we use Gnosis all the time to manage some of our treasury funds. So basically, Gnosis is like a storage solution. As Sarang mentioned, it's like having 3 different keys that all need to be put in place to open a certain door, like in a bank, for instance. So if you, as a basic use case, if you would like to manage a treasury or a wallet together with other addresses, Gnosis, I would say, is the most robust solution on the market right now. So it has both desktop and mobile versions, supports a wide variety of different blockchains, Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, Phantom, Optimism, to name a few. So it allows you to both store and send different assets, and also interact with smart contracts, either directly or through plugin apps. So you can easily interact with popular decentralized finance protocols. You can invest, you can trade, I think Sushi is actually present there, so you can do the contract interaction by actually using the user interface, as you would do if you were the only person who would sign the transaction.
And
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I was just saying there are like two more interesting things, like, you know, unlike how DAO is like a social contract, Gnosis multi-sig safes are, you know, like an actual contract, you know, which basically is governed by the rules of EVM, and, you know, everybody agrees when they actually use it. And the other part is like, you know, in the traditional fashion of how DAOs work, right? People can basically choose to vote, not vote, and, you know, they would abstain. But when it comes to Gnosis Safe, it's like, you know, contractually bound to only execute when there's a consensus, right? So that's also be an interesting point. So I had like one of my friend asking me, right, you know, why not just every token holder in the DAO becomes a part of the multisig, right? And then we come to a problem because some people might be lazy, some people might be dead, right? So you would come to a place where you can't actually get enough majority or consensus to sign it. And when you actually can't take the money out, because that's how the rules are coded in it.
Exactly. Yeah. So Alexei is not present today. Maybe we can change his address to yours, Sarah. I'm kidding.
So, but it's a good point, because you really have to maintain the list of the addresses who can sign the multi-sig transactions, because like it happened in our team as well, because some people come and go, and it happens in every organization. So you have to really act once one of the people who used to send transaction resigns from the organization. You have to replay the address, and for this you have to maintain the majority. So at least like if it's 11 addresses and you need 6 signatures, then it's so basically, like, to make can you hear me, guys, by the way?
You're breaking up a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah, because I've got some issues with the video feed. Yeah, but basically, to make Gnosis multisig a DAO, you need to introduce some sort of like mechanisms to allow the community to manage. That's why actually, like, we've got a structure in place where we don't store all the funds in one multisig, and the majority of funds our treasury has is actually at the advisors controlled multisig contract. So that team can have one multisig for day-to-day purposes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it was okay. I think the audience actually did get that. So one of the other points that I would like to add to what you were saying is that the signatures in Gnosis Safe are actually gasless. And we're going to be talking about on-chain and off-chain voting in a while in DAOs, how those things differ. Well, it actually means that the transactions, the multi-signature transactions that you sign are being signed off-chain, and that saves you network fees and actually saves you time as well. But again, we mentioned that having a multi-sig is not enough for a DAO. So I think there's another component which is very important, and that is a voting system, which allows you to actually abstain from voting, as Sarah mentioned. And let me see. Yeah, and so today we'll probably talk about 2 different kinds of governance systems. So there are governance systems which are called on-chain governance systems, where you as a voter actually submit your vote as a transaction, which is being put on the blockchain, meaning that you have to actually pay a transaction fee associated with every action within the governance system. If it's a high fee blockchain, then that might be very high cost for you to be in the governance. Of course, there are delegated governance systems like liquid democracy systems, which allow you to delegate your vote and actually not participate, but there are some issues with those systems as well. Namely, I would say it's not that decentralized. There might be some corruption going on, some bribery, stuff like that, and your delegates might not always be trustworthy. Actually, I think we've lost Alex because his video is frozen. I'm not sure if he's still with us. Alex, can you wave your hand, or no, he's not with us. Anyway, I will still continue. Okay, we can see you now. Yeah. So I will still continue talking about the thing about on-chain governance is that you're actually able to design your smart contracts in a way that would automatically execute whatever proposal people are putting, and it will execute it based on the outcome of those on-chain votes. So there's actually not even a need for an intermediary, like a team of actual developers who need to implement your proposal. You can write a smart contract which would automatically execute at the end of the vote, depending on the result. And that's quite an interesting system. And in the real world, it doesn't really work that flawlessly all the time, but it's it's something. I think that's the ideologically pure version of a DAO, which is fully based on automatic execution of smart contracts. And so examples of those kinds of on-chain voting systems, they include the most important is MakerDAO, but it's actually more of a hybrid system because they have both off-chain and on-chain voting. But I think they are the pioneers of this format. Also, Aave, probably some protocols built on compound governance framework. So yeah, and some of the benefits of on-chain are definitely that on-chain is more secure than off-chain. And as I mentioned, those proposals that have been passed, they can be executed automatically. Yeah, so now let's talk about off-chain. In off-chain, which is represented by the most popular off-chain voting solution is Snapshot. Your individual vote is actually never submitted as a blockchain transaction. Therefore, there's no transaction fee needed to be paid. And the data that you sign is actually, I think it's being stored on Snapshot on IPFS, or maybe you can set it up to work with a different distributed storage system. And the thing is, well, yes, I mean, there is some kind of reduction of the risk of tampering with your votes. There still needs to be a third party that you can trust to accurately count the votes and sort of put into reality those results of those proposals that have been accepted. So in GTON Capital, we use Snapshot extensively, and then we serve as this sort of third party to be trusted by our community to implement. And I actually think that SushiSwap also uses Snapshot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So Siren, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your setup there?
Yeah, sure. So Sushi is basically an off-chain, has an off-chain voting process with Snapshot. So the way our DAO function is, let's say if you want a change in something, or if you want a new product, it can be anything. You propose that to Sushi Forum, where people get a chance to discuss, and there is like a soft poll there that basically tells what people feel about the proposal, right? So that allows people to engage in a dialogue and give feedback to either make the proposal much better, or to kind of showcase their discomfort with it. After there is like 2 weeks of forum, it then goes to Snapshot, where all the token holders can actually come and vote, and the proposal then according to what the decision is gets executed. And as you rightly said, that an off-chain component here brings in more trust in the team, that they have to be the actually one to execute it versus on-chain. So the on-chain DAOs are the most idealistic condition in DAO, but they are a bit more kind of riskier, because we do have seen hacks that were relying on an on-chain governance. So considering the risk that it has, Sushi had from the start decided to go with an off-chain version using Snapshot. But even DAOs evolve. So in case sometime in future where there's a method which is on-chain and is reliably safe enough, right, the off-chain could vote to become an on-chain DAO, right? Or vice versa. We don't know the future, but currently for the most part, Sushi would be an off-chain governance.
Right, thank you. And actually, GTON Capital is pretty similar in this regard. We also use an off-chain system. Another thing that you mentioned that I forgot to mention is that sometimes there's a preliminary period where you just gauge the community sentiment, and that can actually be done like on a forum or somewhere, or Discord, and Discourse forum or Discord chat. So, but basically, we all know that these polls are actually vulnerable to manipulation. So that's
Definitely
one of the issues that why we need to implement either off-chain or on-chain voting.
Yeah.
There's also like a hybrid approach, which actually takes both off-chain for signaling, for gauging the sentiment, and on-chain for implementing and executing the actual vote. So yeah, now let's probably move on to another interesting topic, and I want Alex to contribute to that conversation. Let me see. So DeFi 2.0 made a lot of noise last year, and a lot of people have been talking about it. So it's kind of a recent innovation in the field of DAOs as well, which introduces a concept which is called protocol-owned liquidity. So, Alex, what do you think about it? What is your opinion?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because like the way you governance, the way you can influence the price of the token, for example, on blockchain is very simple. You just have to adjust the liquidity that you've got on chain and liquidity pools, etc. And basically, like if you've got enough funds to maintain a certain price level, you can do so. And so what Olympus did is actually make sure that they first get the liquid money out of the community when they're buying so-called bonds. So basically, you can deposit, for example, DAI and get a bond for Olympus token OM that gets vested over time. So you lock your funds now, and in a certain period of time, you're going to get much more money out of it. It used to be like 8,000 APR like basically 8,000% of additional OM that you are getting for the funds locked. And yeah, it doesn't sound very sustainable. And if you move to the next slide, you're going to see what's
gonna be
and the next one. Okay. And the next one. So this is the graph of the price of OM. So basically, if you read through the Olympus DAO docs, you will see that what they guarantee is actually the price of OM to be equal at least one DAI. So that means that it's eventually supposed to be like a stable coin. More or less, it is supposed to be pegged to one USD or one DAI in this regard. But because of the mechanics introduced and how it was all executed, the price of the token was fluctuating immensely. And so this is achievable by the means of DAO governance and the governance of the liquidity by the organization. If you go to the previous slide, there are a couple of links. And one of them is the snapshot of Olympus DAO. So can you click it and show what we've got on there?
Yeah, sure. Can you see it now?
So if you scroll through the list of proposals, you can see that actually this is very detailed. They've got so many proposals. You can swipe like extremely fast, and you will never reach the end. So basically, this is how like a real DAO in a sense works, because the majority of the decisions
they're hiring a PR manager through
also, yeah, all of this. So this is one of the examples of kind of extreme DAO functioning, because the proposals that they are running through the community are very detailed, and there are too many decisions for the community to vote upon. And actually, like if you consider what's happening here, they are trying to run quite a complicated project with this kind of centralized governance, because like you have to know everything in order to be voting correctly for all these proposals. It
has to be complete information, but it's impossible.
Yes. And so if you, for example, think of what was happening in the Soviet Union, it's basically the same with the planned economy. So when the decisions are coming from top down, like those people that are making decisions, they have to know everything about the details happening in the field, and it's basically unfeasible. So that's why the economy was collapsing. So I wouldn't say that Olympus per se is failing or something. Of course, there's problem with the token price, etc. But in general, like such an approach, when you've got so many decisions, probably it's not best to ask everyone to vote on every certain decision. So that's why we're thinking of actually experimenting with our DAO governance model with these so-called sub-DAOs, because you need subject matter experts when if you want the governance to be really happening efficiently. Because if people don't know what they're voting upon, it might lead to very bad decisions, and you're not going to adapt to the market very quickly. So that's why one of the approaches that DAOs in the future might be taking is actually splitting the governance into like smaller chunks of people responsible for certain operations, if they're experts on it, or if they really want to contribute into it. So for example, you might be voting not with the main token of the project, but you have to swap this token for the governance token of this new sub project. Like if you really believe in the future of the project, if you really believe that you might be able to contribute well to its future, then you have to risk with the funds as well. If you're able to persuade the community to to run this project well, your token can increase in value relative to the token that you exchange it for. So yeah.
Right, and community-wide education, as we're doing right now, is one of the things that can help people to actually do decisions that would align with the best strategic path to a certain project. And also, it's interesting that you can moderate proposals, and but then it's not a DAO essentially, but it's like sort of a hybrid system where the core team is vested with more responsibility in terms of deciding what to do strategically, but then you still consult the community of token holders, and that's just sort of a system that can also work. Yeah, interesting. Thanks a lot for that. So since we have Sarang here from Sushi, I've been kind of sitting here and wondering what he might share about the experience of the Sushi team with DAOs. And so, Sarang, could you tell us how Sushi used this concept in the past? What was the result? How do you see the future of DAOs for Sushi and stuff like that? Share whatever you like.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was quite literally laughing on the the graph of the token back then. Probably half of the crypto is very similar to that graph, but yeah.
But it works according to the model that they put into the docs. Yeah.
Definitely. But Sushi has been obviously one of the most community focused DAO from the start itself, and a lot of people, why they connect with Sushi more, because it was a community-led project where people actually had say on what decisions to be taken from the DAO itself. So there wasn't any VC sold off or stuff like that. People come, they migrated their liquidity, they earned Sushi, which they ultimately use to take decisions on what direction that Sushi would go to from now on, and in future. Sushi has actually faced a lot of challenges and good things with the DAO itself. So we have actually I've been days where I've completely hated DAOs, and I have had days where I completely love DAOs. So it's always in the gray shade actually. So to start, right, we actually had like a restructure proposal which went through the snapshot itself, and there was always an unset hierarchy in the team, which was let's say Sushi 1.0 and Sushi 2.0. So Sushi 2.0 is the current and the future Sushi, and Sushi 1.0 was previous Sushi with previous contributors, right? So I was also the part of 1.0, and I'm also the part of 2.0. And there are like few contributors who were there for both. Some of them left as a part of the restructure, but there was always like a social hierarchy which was built, And because it was not enforced via the DAO, people kind of like, broke it. And there was a huge drama according to, how Sushi should function. And there were like huge troubles because at the Sushi constitutions, we haven't listed how the teams and everything should work. So in future, if we, kind of create DAOs, I would kind of, try to enforce that from the first proposal itself, that this person holds this power, this person has, this percentage of power into the protocol. And as Alex said, like it is extremely difficult for you to take every decision when you have to go ask for, permission to the DAO. It's like, imagine having a democracy, but for every decision your government takes, there's a voting. People would just stop working or they would not vote, right? So, and both of them is actually bad, right? So what we have seen is like the better model is having a few team members or few people who could be trusted with taking some decisions, right? And if you see live, right, like in Sushi's 2.0 restructure proposal, we had put out a mandate to hire somebody called as a head chef. So a head chef is the person who would have, he's not like, the technical corporate evil CEO, but he would have some more powers which were a bit controversial. So in the terms of like say hiring and firing, right? Because now for the DAO, let's say if there's a team member who has done something not very good inside the team, right? And he goes to the forum saying, and he's like say fired, and he goes to the forum and DAO or saying that no, I did not do it, because everybody doesn't have all the technical insight of things, right? It becomes very difficult for the DAO to actually function, and the decisions are then taken on hearsay or how you sugarcoat or honeycoat the words and put it out, right? Rather than the actual facts, because it's all about trust at that point of time, right? So like say the head chef in our case would be kind of having such powers, but it would be governed by somebody called as compensation committee in our case, which would have more power in terms of if the head chef is performing their duty properly, what would be the compensation of the new people coming in. The other process, the earlier was everybody used to go through the forum, they used to put a proposal saying that I should be hired for this salary for this amount of time and stuff like that, which used to work, but it kind of takes that process takes very long, and people often lose interest doing that. But having a head chef would basically allow us to hire faster, maybe fire faster if if it comes to that. But it kind of gives some vested powers to the to a person or group of people whom the DAO actually trusts. And there are also in checks which basically guarantee that this person, if they start acting bad, they couldn't hurt you more. Because you are putting in trust, if the person starts acting bad, there will be some consequences, and but it wouldn't be up to a level that the DAO dies, right? So Sushi has obviously survived a lot of times, and we had a lot of near-death experiences, but in a way Sushi has actually gone. So if I can tell you one more example of how good a DAO is,
sure.
right? So let's say Sushi has been mostly a DeFi focused powerhouse, right? We have lending, borrowing, swaps, limit orders, token launcher, and whatnot. But there was a proposal of like a NFT marketplace called as Show You. Initially, I was awestruck by the idea. I was like, really, do we need that? Should we kind of fund such thing? Because Sushi is more DeFi focused, and DAO actually voted in favor of that, against like what I think, and which is perfectly fine. And I was proven wrong, because Show You, when I see back, which is still in development, it could be out very soon, is really really good for the community and how it provides back at Sushi. So again, like you should not also give people, as like say me in the team, such powers that I could sabotage new product development. So you have to basically strike or find the right balance of trying to getting things executed faster, but not on the compass of basically like sabotaging everything. So it's just a very hard balance to find, honestly. And I would not say that we have still found it, but we are closer to it than ever.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's a hard balance to find, and all of the projects that actually use the DAO model, I think they're implementing different ideas, experimenting to find this balance. That's why the hybrid models actually appear, and the head chef is quite an interesting concept. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. I will probably continue by talking about the GTON DAO, which is first and foremost a DAO, and maybe Alex will also help me out here. So we actually at GTON, we use the usual cycle of placing a proposal on the forum, discussing it, achieving preliminary consensus there, and then voting for it on Snapshot off-chain. So we don't have an on-chain component right now. And as Sarang mentioned, this can actually change in the future if we want there to be more autonomy for the DAO itself. But right now it works like that. The proposal is actually depends on the trust to the core team to implement it. So it's binding in a way because token holders can actually, we are in very close communication with them. Token holders can actually influence this process a lot, and we collaborate with a lot of holders of GTON. So that's sort of pretty much a balanced process as of now. And we actually seem to have all the different components that work together, except for the on-chain voting part. So as I mentioned, we use Gnosis safe extensively. We use snapshot voting, and it's interesting to look at the things that we're building from the DAO angle. So the first thing is that we're actually attempting to create a new layer 2 roll-up solution, which means that the stakers of GTON, the validators of the blockchain, they will themselves they will form sort of a governance structure, and they will be actually one of the people responsible with deciding different kinds of parameters, and if we ever need to change those or tweak those. So since we're going to have a multi-collateralized stablecoin based on the unit protocol, there are also some foundational parameters that need to be established first in terms of fees and like bridge fees, and maybe some of the decisions that we have to make where to actually go next with this particular project as well. So since our DAO actually controls a treasury, we also have the bonding concept mentioned by Alex to monetize our treasury, to reinvest the revenue then into different ecosystem projects. And yeah, so that will be the basic foundational building blocks, I would say, of the GTON Capital DAO. So maybe Alex, you want to mention some more detail, something you find interesting?
Probably just a remark regarding this potential sub-DAO division that we might be willing to introduce in the future, because it really makes sense that separate projects, especially like if we are also functioning as a fund, because we take in people's money through bonding, and we need to make sure that we are using this money efficiently in order to grow the ecosystem in general. So by building great products on top of our protocol, on top of our L2 solution. And for this, we need experts who are going to run those operations. And this can be done by subdivision of this decision-making process into smaller units that can act swiftly, have people in the community who are more involved with these particular projects, instead of like trying to get the entire community of all the GTON holders to vote on every decision regarding every product that we have. So yeah, so it's all about like the setting up the correct structure for the governance of like of the thing if it's starting to grow. It's even like from the theory of management perspective. So when the organization grows, you have to introduce the structure, like I don't know, like all of those examples, like matrix structure, like all of it. Yeah, and we're on the forefront of like Web3, trying to find ways to organize the work in such a way that it's efficient and allows for the good utilization of the funds at our disposal.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So we actually, I think we're almost out of time. I would maybe dedicate 5 more minutes to just sort of free conversation. I want to use this opportunity egotistically and pose a question that actually bothers me a lot when I can't sleep at night. I'm thinking about, I'm not sure if you guys are interested in discussing this. I'm just, throwing it out there if you want to. What do you guys think about the combination of AI actors, like artificial intelligence based actors and DAOs? Because I've heard lots of speculation about it. Like there's a researcher, Trent McConaughey, and he was speculating even since the beginning of the DAO story, like even since 2016, he was talking about how the next step of the DAO evolution would be actually integrating some of the AI systems into it. So it actually goes like this: like he starts with like Bitcoin, then it's blockchain, smart contracts, decentralization, then DAO, and then AI DAO. So I was just wondering what you guys think about it.
That's a really interesting point. Actually, I was also trying to solve some captcha. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do it. So I'm not sure. What are you referring with AI and AI people in the DAO? I'm just kidding. But I mean, like it's a very interesting concept, but we still have. I still feel that we are quite a far away from that thing. That doesn't mean we shouldn't discuss on this. But to be honest, like DAOs have been like much more confused because of the people. I think like most parameters that AI bots would have, I am not sure how they would even process such kind of varieties of things, right? And the other thing is like some of the things actually require much more complex thinking, which some of the AI bots haven't kind of advanced enough to do that, or maybe like I don't know if they're such advanced. So that's like another thing. But also there are a lot of kind of Web 2 components that a DAO has to connect with. So I actually forgot to mention that, but a lot of things inside Web 3 are also depend upon Web 2. So for instance, a lot of DAOs websites are hosted on a server, right? How would a DAO pay it in like a legal fashion? So there are still more concerns on how a DAO looks like legally. There have been few ideas of setting up some entity, having service companies, which is actually the most dominant way people do it right now. But there's still not much legal clarity on what's the best way forward when you kind of set up a DAO. Because right now, probably if you don't have like a developer entity or service company, you guys would be probably directly liable. So there are a lot of nuances as well when it comes to mapping a DAO to a Web 2.0 legal structure and architecture.
Oh yeah, actually I read today, it's just a joke. I read today that if you're in Wyoming, you can actually sort of transform your LLC legal structure into DAO, and I think they implemented that. It's the only state in the US that can do that at this point. Just a small fact. But thanks a lot for mentioning that. It's actually interesting. It's a bit of a different topic, but still interesting. So I'd like to maybe let Alex respond as well.
Yes. So in general, AI currently is not AI. It's just machine learning tools mostly, and they are not able to solve any problems that humans cannot solve. And like there are a lot of stuff where there's not one particular answer of how to move ahead, especially in such complex systems. So I think that there is an application for AI in like DAO as DAO tools, I would say, but it should be very limited to specific tasks of, like, for example, treasury management. So you can introduce some sort of like a model that, for example, move liquidity accordingly to like some external factors, etc. But yeah, it's hard to imagine how like what's happening on snapshot can be affected by AI, because it's really hard to introduce AI in those to those complex questions.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I was thinking maybe about like using the transformer models to generate proposals and then to act upon them, or to generate smart contract code because we have such a large database of different. Have you actually heard about GitHub Copilot? I'm sorry, I'm talking about AI. It's not the topic of today, but I'm just very fascinated by what's happening.
Yeah, I've read about it today, but I haven't checked it out. Very interesting what it has to offer, but I wouldn't allow it to write smart contracts, definitely, because too much is at stake.
Only on testnet then, right?
Oh yeah.
Sure. So yeah, I think we have to wrap up, unfortunately. So maybe just final words from Sarang, then from Alex, and then from myself. So Sarang, you go first.
Yeah, it was actually like a really pleasure talking to you guys, and like, thanks for having me. On the side, like I still feel like, DAOs need much more evolution, and the concept of DAO actually allows you to have, such evolution. So I mean, like what I see is like we're just seeing like 10% of the DAO, and recently a lot of tools have also popped up, such as Utopia, which actually helps you to manage DAOs. So we are right now building the infra for a future DAOs to function in a much efficient manner. So if you look at DAOs right now, you would find there is a lot of friction, there are a lot of problems, but there are ongoing solutions to make it work much better. So just hang in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, regarding the tools, we're also exploring these. We've been building a chat solution that allows token holders to communicate with each other in a decentralized way without revealing their identity, etc. But yeah, I agree that there is a lot of room for improvement for how DAOs currently operate. But I'm pretty sure like it's one of the right directions of how to run distributed teams. So it's really interesting where it leads.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So I would probably just end by saying that there needs to be, as my colleagues here mentioned, there needs to be lots of improvement in the DAO structures themselves and the incentive models. But there's also, of course, human nature, which we can't really deal with that precisely. And DAOs will always be this weird combination of different decisions, economically maybe not very sound decisions that are being made by human actors, and different incentive structures that those actors are being put in. And so I think it's bound to still remain interesting for a long time, unless it's all get automated by AI, as I mentioned. Yeah, so anyway, thanks a lot for joining in. It has been the team from GTON Capital and Sarang, a core developer from Sushi. So don't forget to subscribe to GTON, to Sushi, and to Web3 London, which help us to organize this live stream. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Thanks a lot. See you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks.
Well done. Thank you.